This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The shocking price of the cost of living crisis. The parents forced to break the law to feed their babies because of the soaring cost of formula milk.
It's theft, but I think it's criminal how much they charge for this stuff. If it was a case of stealing or having your baby go without, you would steal.
All these things that are happening are putting us on the brink of a public health crisis.
Warm words for Ukraine in Iceland, but the Prime Minister urges European leaders to rethink laws that prevent migrant deportations. The gang jailed over a 20-year-old scam selling false passports to fugitives who'd committed a litany of crimes. A government review of the SAT's English reading test, which required children to answer a question every 34 seconds.
Did you know about it personally?
A top prosecutor in Scotland refuses to say if the search of Nicola Sturgeon's home was deliberately delayed until after she left office.
That voice was not mine. The words were not mine. And the audio was an AI voice cloning software.
Attack of the clones in Washington as the head of the AI service, ChatGPT, warns of the need for government intervention. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The cost of living crisis has pushed families across the country to the brink of despair. But now a Sky News investigation has highlighted the extreme choices parents are being forced to make just to feed their babies. New data shows the price of the cheapest brand of milk formula has risen by 45% in the past 2 years. We've spoken to parents who resorted to stealing tubs of powdered milk because they simply can't afford to buy them. Others are ordering already opened second-hand tubs being sold online or using condensed milk instead. Experts have warned this could lead to a public health crisis. Sky's national correspondent Tom Parmenter reports.
For many babies, this is all they have, the formula milk that's their daily essential. The boy in this buggy needs it, but his parents can't afford it.
We manage our money normally. It's just when we're really desperate, we'll do anything for him, even though it's a break of the law.
She wanted to breastfeed, but her son wouldn't latch on, so he's entirely reliant on formula. The high prices are driving his parents to do whatever they can to keep him fed.
It's wrong, and it makes me feel horrible. Stealing, but you got to do what's right for him because he needs it. Can't give him anything else.
It's the baby's father who goes out to get it.
If it was a case of stealing or having your baby go without, you would steal. I know you would. Even you might hate it. There's no way you'd let him starve. It's theft, but I think it's criminal how much they charge for this stuff.
You can see on the supermarket shelves just how much security is now in place to deter shoplifters. But at the Hartlepool Baby Bank, they are in no doubt. The high prices are putting babies at risk.
Thank you. People are doing a lot of unsafe practices to get hold of formula. They are swapping and chopping and changing, and we do not recommend that. We've even heard families using tubs of condensed milk. That is not suitable for an under one.
You're in no doubt that there are families who just aren't able to put their hand up and ask for help.
No, because of the shame, the stigma, the fear of trolling, the fear that social services may get involved, the fear they may lose their child.
Families are also searching online for cheaper options.
It could have been mixed with anything. It could be half a tub, it could be out of date, it could be laden with bacteria.
So that packet is actually open?
It shouldn't be allowed that we're selling open formula because the health risks for that child can be quite severe. This could be a baby who ends up in A&E needing a drip because they could get such a bad stomach bug, they could get seriously dehydrated. It's horrendous. And there's a lot of it.
Baby banks and charities across the UK have described this to us as a hidden crisis.
We put a lot of focus on the need for breastfeeding support, quite rightly, but that now needs to be seen as a completely separate issue to this. All these things that are happening are putting us on the brink of a public health crisis. If we are seeing families watering down milk, using condensed milk, buying potentially opened tubs of formula milk online, the genesis and safety of which cannot be guaranteed, then that is a very, very serious problem which puts babies' health at risk.
The formula milk manufacturers say they realise how stretched family budgets are, but say their production costs have significantly increased. The Westminster government also says it recognises this struggle and it is helping with the cost of living. There is, though, no plan to increase the value of Healthy Start vouchers. But when the health of British babies is under threat like this, it can't lurk in the shadows any longer. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
And we've been inundated with responses from you since that report first aired earlier today. Here's a flavour of them. I am so not proud to be British anymore. We are not a third world country, but hearing stories such as you have highlighted makes me doubt where I am living. Ripped off at the fuel pump, ripped off in the supermarket, and now hitting babies. Formula companies are making huge profits and the product should be exempt from VAT. The government need to immediately allow doctors to prescribe baby formula for free. The cost of formula milk is a national disgrace and Rishi Sunak should do everything in his power to tackle this issue. Our national correspondent Tom Parmenter joins us now live. And Tom, people have been really shocked by your report, as you heard there some of those comments calling for formula milk to be made freely available to people.
Yeah, throughout the day, the calls for this to be recognised as a public health crisis have grown, and it has remained a hidden problem for too long. It is such a crucial part of a baby's development, those first 12 months, not just for childhood, but for the entirety of their adult life, because you put in place the building blocks for health in those first 12 months. We've spoken to parents up and down the country who have told us this is the last thing they want to be doing, taking these risky decisions, but they simply can't afford to feed their babies safely. This is an industry, the milk formula industry, that is under renewed scrutiny. And tomorrow on Sky News, we'll be examining precisely what is going on with the prices that people are being charged in the shops and asking whether these big multinational companies really are on the side of British families who find themselves in such agonising situations.
OK, Tom, thank you. Look forward to tomorrow's report. Well, those concerns about baby milk formula form part of a wider crisis with food prices, with new figures revealing the price of some everyday items has doubled over the past 12 months. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire has been looking at what's pushing prices up and whether any relief is on the way.
Inflation is supposed to have peaked, but food prices are still going up and up.
I've bought 4 mangoes, they're not very big, and I paid £8 for them, and normally you wouldn't pay that much. I think it sounds like they've doubled in price.
It's things like eggs and butter and milk that have really gone up a lot, just the basic things.
Buyers at Kirkgate Market in Leeds are suffering, and so are sellers.
Customers argue with you, but the thing is, the retailer gets the brunt of it, because we have to buy it regardless, because if you can't have empty shelves, can you, with no on it?
So what's happening here? Well, inflation in general is beginning to slow, running around 10%. But food prices rose by 20% in the year to March. It's the fastest rise in 45 years. And they're rising for all types of food, but especially for dairy products. 29.7% in that category. Cheddar cheese has risen 42% in a year. Now, supermarket and dairy manufacturers say that rising input costs, things like the cost of fuel and wages, have forced them to raise checkout prices for things like milk, cheese and butter. But if you dig under the bonnet, something else seems to be happening. New analysis by the Sky News data team tells a bit more of a complicated story. So the input cost for dairy manufacturers has risen, but nowhere near as much the prices they're charging to retailers in yellow. And the prices that retailers have charged to consumers, that's been rising even more. And look at those graphs on the left. You can see that in recent months, those prices, the inputs, they have started to fall, started to flatline, but the consumer prices continue to rocket. And we can look at those input prices in a bit more detail. You can see just how much energy and grains, they were really high, but they have been coming down. So shouldn't the price of food come down too?
Was today's meeting a success?
Well, the head of the National Farmers Union warned that the pain is here to stay.
I think it's about fairness in that supply chain. Farmers are not going to be able to keep producing food if they're not getting a fair return for the costs that they are facing into. And we're seeing effectively 50% cost inflation for food-producing businesses. So it's about everybody sharing that pain.
She was speaking at a special summit for the food industry at Downing Street.
The government is supporting people on the lowest income with the Household Support Fund. Payments have been going out to people in order to help with that particular cost of living challenge. But more broadly, of course, we're seeing changes to energy costs, seeing them start to come down. That's critical for the food industry as well.
New inflation figures come out next week, and the Sky News data team will be looking at why consumer prices are rising, even while the inputs are falling. The government says that food inflation isn't going away soon. Bad news for all of us buying our daily bread. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
The Prime Minister has lobbied other European nations for a change in rules which have so far blocked deportation flights to Rwanda. At a meeting in Iceland of the Council of Europe, the continent's human rights organisation, Mr Sunak has been trying to force the migration issue onto an agenda which has been otherwise dominated by the war in Ukraine. Our correspondent, Ali Fortescue, joins us from the Icelandic capital, Reykjavik.
Gillian, this is the start of a huge week for Rishi Sunak on the world stage. He arrived in Iceland this morning. He is already leaving this evening, heading back to London, where he'll be picking up the press lobby and flying to Japan for the G7 tomorrow. All of these big world stage events are an opportunity for the Prime Minister to look statesmanly, to look relaxed amongst world leaders. But so often this isn't about the Prime Minister's international image. This is about a domestic message, sending a message back home. And that is exactly what we saw from Rishi Sunak today.
Thank you, General. Very nice to say. Thank you so much for having us.
This hasn't happened for more than a decade. The Council of Europe, created to protect democracy after the Second World War, holding a summit a year since Russia was expelled.
President Zelensky, you have the floor.
There is one clear subject on the agenda, and one leader everyone wants to hear from.
We are trying very hard to improve the protection of our people. And I thank all the countries and leaders who help us to improve our air defense. Altogether, we are showing what our 100% mean and what the power of the free world means.
Today, the UK joined other countries signing up to an international register of damages, recording harm caused by Russian aggression.
Today, we are facing the greatest threat to democracy and the rule of law on our continent.
But on the world stage, domestic politics is often at play too.
We need to do more to cooperate across borders and across jurisdictions to end illegal migration and stop the boats. The Council already plays a vital role, but I urge leaders to consider how we can go further, because we know what we can achieve together.
And this is a Prime Minister in trouble at home.
Rishi Sunak has been weakened by a dire set of local election results. He wants to use this as an opportunity on the world stage to send a message that he is tough on immigration back home. He knows he is facing pressure from the right of his party.
Do you think you can actually achieve something with European leaders today, or is this just rhetoric for domestic consumption?
Well, actually, the UK has a long track record of leading and being at the heart of these conversations.
On camera, the meetings were friendly.
It was lovely to see you at the coronation.
Off camera, the Prime Minister met with the President of the European Court of Human Rights. He urged reform to stop interventions like this one. The Rwanda flight controversially grounded last year by a European judge. But it's not clear there's any willingness for change elsewhere in Europe.
Asylum is part of our principles and our DNA, and we want to be more efficient to fight against smugglers. This is the balance I will describe. So I will exactly look at what my good friend Rishi Sunak said this morning.
The diplomatic ritual, the cosy European lineup, it all sends a message. Striking the right tone over the coming days, abroad and at home, won't be easy for Rishi Sunak.
I think one of the big questions today was this a Prime Minister that appeared to be among friends or on the fringes? And the sense you got is that on Ukraine, Rishi Sunak is a Prime Minister in a country that has been leading the charge. But on immigration, it was a different story. This was what Rishi Sunak wanted to talk about. And it didn't seem, I have to say, like the audience here was particularly receptive. But as I say, that didn't really matter because this was rhetoric for domestic consumption. I don't think anyone today expected a big European breakthrough on immigration.
OK, Ali, thank you. 3 men who ran a global passport service for fugitives have been sentenced to more than a combined 17 years in prison. Their 2-decade-long operation obtained documents for the most wanted murderers, gun smugglers and drug traffickers before they were eventually caught. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt reports.
Anthony Beard recruiting an identity donor, persuading a man to sell him his passport. The first step in the scam. Step 2, Beard meeting a man who wants to buy the passport, a fugitive drug trafficker. Step 3 was the clever bit. Anthony Beard took the passport he'd just bought and applied for a new one, using the fugitive's photograph. He claimed the original passport had been damaged or lost. So long as the fugitive looked more or less like the original passport holder, the scam worked. Many of Britain's most wanted fugitives bought the documents, known as FOGs, fraudulently obtained genuine passports.
The passport would be a golden ticket, whether you're wanted or whether you want to go in and out of the country, not seen by, obviously, law enforcement or by borders. It would be absolutely key to running an organised criminal network internationally and across borders. It's absolutely key to their business structure.
I'll come back in 20 minutes.
Beard used a high street shop to print out the photos of his customers waiting for passports. Christopher Zitek was the go-between. He found the buyers through his contacts with organised crime groups in London and Scotland. He and Beard were bugged discussing a potential passport customer.
It's wanted for voluntary murder, kidnapping, hostage taking, theft with use of arms, drug trafficking, arms and ammunition trafficking, cybercrime, money laundering and serious injury.
Cannabis trafficker Jamie Acourt bought a passport while hiding in Spain. He was once a suspect in the Stephen Lawrence murder. Gunrunner Richard Burdett, a fugitive in Holland. And cocaine smuggler Michael Mugan in Dubai also used the gang's passports. At court, Anthony Beard was jailed for 6 years and 8 months. The judge said the gang had enabled very wicked, sophisticated and violent criminals to evade justice. Zitek was jailed for 8 years. Alan Thompson, described as the gang's dog's body, got 3 years. The Home Office said the sentences demonstrated the government's commitment to tackle and dismantle criminal gangs threatening public safety for profit. Martin Brunt, Sky News at Reading Crown Court.
The head of Scotland's prosecution service has refused to say whether a search warrant for Nicola Sturgeon's home was deliberately delayed until after she left office. Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain KC, who leads the Crown Office, was questioned by Sky News after it emerged that her organisation was made aware of the police request to raid the former First Minister's home 2 weeks before it was given the green light. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillies reports.
It was the extraordinary moment the home of Scotland's former First Minister was swarming with police. The day Nicola Sturgeon's husband was detained by detectives investigating SNP finances. Ex-Chief Executive Peter Murrell later released without charge.
We've increased support from the last poll and it shows that Labour has fallen behind.
Weeks before, the Sky News debate was in full flow as the candidates in the race to replace Sturgeon fought live on TV. The stakes were high. And now this document obtained from Police Scotland shows what was happening behind the scenes at the time. It suggests officers made a formal request to prosecutors to search the home of the former First Minister while the SNP contest was still going on. But crucially, it wasn't given the green light until Humza Yousaf was installed as the new leader and the race was over. The head of Scotland's prosecution service refused to tell Sky News whether this was a deliberate delay.
Did you know about it personally?
The Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service
Dorothy
staff.
Bain is Scotland's most senior law officer, but also sits in the Scottish Government Cabinet as Chief Legal Advisor.
If push comes to shove, we're going to have a judge-led inquiry. We simply cannot have political interference in the legal and justice system in Scotland. I'm disappointed that the Lord Advocate hasn't been quite clear and refuted this. This seems to give legs to the suggestion that somebody in the Crown Office has slowed down a prosecution or investigation, rather, and that is simply unacceptable.
Prosecutors say Dorothy Bain has nothing to do with cases where politicians are involved, but questions are mounting and the police investigation is not over. Conor Gillis, Sky News, Edinburgh.
2 poultry workers have tested positive for bird flu in England as part of the UK Health Security Agency testing programme. The cases are believed to be linked to the exposure of sick birds on a single poultry farm where the 2 people had recently worked. Both have since tested negative for the virus and there were no signs of human-to-human transmission. Essex police are investigating an allegation of serious sexual assault against the MP Julian Knight. The allegation was referred by the Met Police, who had previously shelved their investigation into the MP for Solihull. Mr Knight, who has been suspended by the Conservative Party, has denied what he called a false and malicious accusation. A man and a woman who were found dead in a house in Huddersfield have been named by West Yorkshire Police. Katie Higton and Stephen Harnett were found at a property in Dalton on Monday morning. A 34-year-old man remains in police custody on suspicion of their murders. The Schools Minister has said he will look into concerns that last week's SATs for Year 6 pupils were too difficult. Parents and teachers complained about the reading exam, with one teachers' union saying that even staff struggled to understand the questions. Sky's Becky Johnson has been getting the views from the classroom in Stafford.
I consider myself quite a good reader, and even I found it quite hard myself. So I was panicking. I was like, I'm not going to be able to finish. So I was sitting there like, I'm not going to be able to pass, or I'm not going to get the grade I expected.
Some questions I did leave, and when I went back, I had to skim read and I couldn't find them.
They're talking about their SATs reading test.
I try not to get too stressed, but inside I was like screaming.
It was much more difficult than pupils or teachers had prepared for and left some children in tears.
Some of them were quite distraught, really, because it just wasn't what they were expecting, I think. It was one of the trickiest ones that I've ever seen in my time here.
We can't show the test, as some pupils could still be sitting it this week, but we've been told that children had to read 3,443 words of text and questions, one of the longest SATs reading tests ever. It means a child reading at the minimum speed for that age would spend 38 minutes and 14 seconds reading out of the hour allocated, so they'd have just 34 seconds to answer each question. The content of the test has also been criticised. It included cultural references and expressions that would have made it difficult for some children to understand. And the way some questions were worded left even teachers wondering what it was getting at. Many parents are unhappy.
Some of the girls were crying, and I believe the teacher said it was harder than previous years.
It's quite harsh for them, really, to have that extra pressure put on them.
After hundreds of complaints, the Schools Minister has agreed to look into it.
The Standards and Testing Agency, which conduct the SATs tests, they test these tests over many years. They test them with children, and they are assured that it was the right test for the children this year. Challenging, of course, because it has to test a whole range of abilities, but I'll certainly be looking at the test, as I do every year, when the tests are available to the public.
The head teacher of this school near Stafford wants the government to go further.
So what I'd like to see is some adjustment in the marking, some flexibility in their approach to looking at the questions, and potentially lowering of the pass marks.
SATs matter to schools. It's how they're ranked in league tables. It'll be an anxious wait until July when they get the results. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Staffordshire.
The creator of ChatGPT has warned US lawmakers that regulation of artificial intelligence is essential. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, told the US Congress that the influence of AI in coming US elections is a significant concern.
We're going to face an election next year and these models are getting better. I think this is a significant area of concern. I think there's a lot of policies that companies can voluntarily adopt, and I'm happy to talk about what we do there. I do think some regulation would be quite wise on this topic. I think people are able to adapt quite quickly. When Photoshop came onto the scene a long time ago, for a while people were really quite fooled by Photoshopped images, and then pretty quickly developed an understanding that images might be Photoshopped. This will be like that, but on steroids.
Well, our US correspondent Mark Stone joins us from Washington now. And Mark, how unusual is it for the creator of this technology to ask for intervention, to ask to be regulated?
Well, it's unusual for anyone to come here from a tech firm and say, look, regulate us more. Usually politicians are used to people coming here saying, cut the red tape, free us up, allow innovation, but not this time. It really was striking. Sam Altman, a man who was at the heart of the revolution that is AI, coming here and saying, look, there are so many good things that AI can do, but there are so many really scary things that AI can do as well. And what struck me was that he said there are lots of things we know that AI can do that might not be all that great, but there are so many known unknowns as they're described, things that we just don't understand yet about AI, technologies that it can impact, the way it can impact our lives in so many different ways. And he was calling clearly for regulation. At one point, he referenced the IAEA, the nuclear regulator, global nuclear regulator, and he said that there needs to be something similar, something global for artificial intelligence. And what I was also struck by was that there was bipartisan agreement on both sides of the aisle here. They recognized that, yes, there needs to be regulation, that they are behind Europe, only just behind. Europe is hardly away and ahead on AI regulation, but they are ahead of the United States. So a very, very interesting few hours on Capitol Hill, where I think lots of thought went into what can be done. And what struck me too was just how much we don't yet know about the damage and the dangers of AI. And Microsoft today has warned that AI is able now, beginning to be able to reason like human beings. And I think the prospect of that really is frightening. We could be trying to regulate something that's smarter than we are.
Interesting. Mark, thank you.